All right, good morning. I welcome you to the first class of the semester, Field 309, Oriental Philosophy. I'll just give you the introduction of what we will be engaging ourselves in during the course of the semester, and from there, we'll see next week and we'll start the course properly. I'm unavailable for this week, that's why I need to send this video to you. So is Oriental philosophy, we'll be going through the trajectory of Oriental philosophy, its origin, the scope, and why Oriental philosophy. We look at arguments for and against Oriental philosophy and its relevance. We look at Hinduism, the philosophy, the metaphysics, the epistemology, and ethics. We look at Buddhism, the religion, the philosophy, the epistemology, the metaphysics, and the ethics. We look at Confucianism, the ethics, the epistemology, the metaphysics. We look at Jainism and Taoism as a religion. We look at all these themes and we look at the general themes that cut across the entire Oriental philosophy and how relevant is Oriental philosophy to the contemporary period. You would agree with me with a brief introduction. Oriental philosophy happens to be the philosophy of the Asian people. And what do we mean by the Asian people? We mean the Koreans, Japans, China, India, and the likes. That is the general Asian philosophy. Like when we say African philosophy now, African philosophy does not simply mean the philosophy of the Yoruba or the philosophy of the Igbo, but then an holistic view of different philosophical imposition, different philosophical knowledge within the African purview. Everything together makes up what we call the African philosophy. So the same way for the Oriental philosophy, it is generally the philosophy of the Asian people. However, by and large, you must believe that every philosophy is first cultural, including the Greek philosophy. Every philosophy is first cultural. Some have argued against the study of Oriental philosophy on the basis that this philosophy is an intertwine between religion and culture. But the truth of the matter is, even when you look deeply into what we call the Greek philosophy that transcends into what we call the Western philosophy of today, we discover that it originated from cultural basis. Notwithstanding, we look at the development and how they've added well to the global scale today. So you also look at the Asian philosophy. You look at China, you look at Japan, you look at Korea, you look at how well these guys have developed in terms of technological advancement, in terms of culture, and you look at it and ask yourself the fundamental question: how were you able to attain this height? So it then makes their philosophy relevant, it then makes their philosophy something very unique for every individual to study. And one thing about the Asian people is the fact that some of them were colonized by the British, but then they really do not throw away some sacred aspects of their philosophy. And that is why we would be looking at what constitutes the philosophy of the Asian people, also regarded as Oriental philosophy. Now, let's look at argument against Oriental philosophy very quickly. Some philosophers think and argue that the contemporary high level of scientific and technological innovation in the Western world has long overshadowed the thought contained in Oriental philosophy. Hence, there is no need for Oriental philosophy. Those are some of the arguments that were levied against Oriental philosophy. Apart from this, another school of thought believe that we should not consider Oriental philosophy as a philosophical school of thought. Rather, we should see it as a body of religion and mystical thought, reduced and that is filled with rites and ceremony. But then, if you look at the trajectory and the origin of African philosophy sef, most especially the Bantu philosophy of tempest, you discover it began as an offshoot of studying the ceremonial rites, the culture of a particular group of people. So because a philosophy is rooted in culture or the religion does not still evade it from being philosophy. I don't know if you get my point. Now, the other philosopher claim that Oriental philosophy is odd and it is nothing but a religion. But the truth about this is along our line, as we discuss the course, you discover that Oriental philosophy is quite more than religion. It is quite more than religion. And you would agree with me from what I've read earlier to you when I mentioned Hinduism. Hinduism is not just a culture. If you look at Hinduism, you want to see that there is an epistemology in Hinduism. There is a metaphysics in Hinduism. There is ethics in Hinduism. In fact, when you look at Confucius philosophy, that is Confucianism, you get to discover that the filial petite of Confucianism has served as a paradigm for virtue ethics in some parts of the world. So when you look at the filial petite of Confucianism, you would want to agree with the fact that these things, these ideologies, this belief cannot be evaded from what philosophy really is. So you must be able to understand. Then after we get this, we try to look at how relevant are these philosophies, this school of thought, to contemporary society. How well do we still use it? And now let me add this to it. You see, this thing we call civilization is not cannot be monopolized by any individual or any culture. This thing we call civilization, it is like what we pick from different cultures. You discover that the science of environment was picked from the ancient Egypt. So this thing called civilization was a collaboration from knowledge from diverse culture. So we cannot really monopolize what we call civilization to be a Western ideology or to be a philosophy that supports a particular ideology. So when you look at how Oriental philosophy has also contributed immensely to what we call the development of the world, the development of the cosmos, and the development of human person. And if you would agree with me, you look at the Asian tigers in terms of technology and science, you know that they are doing well. Talk of China, talk of Korea, talk of Japan. You would agree with me that they are doing excellently well. They are doing excellently well. So we look at all these things and how they try to relate. So we meet next week for the class. That's just an introductory class. So do have a nice time.